Policy Work Group, highlighting the caucus's successes at crossover. House Republican Caucus members and their legislation reflect a full spectrum of conservative principles. The Caucus Policy Work Group has channeled the best that our caucus has to offer for a clear, succinct vision for Virginia. Our core mission this session has been, and continues to be, passing measures to promote job creation, economic growth in the private sector, create affordable access to innovative education, make government more efficient and effective, and protect the welfare and safety of the public. This morning, I'm honored to join with caucus leadership to review legislation we have passed that further demonstrates our commitment to good government that the majority of Virginians expect. The measures presented today are common sense reforms to improve Virginia's government and will affect every citizen of the Commonwealth in a positive way. We are honored to have the Speaker of the House of Delegates, William J. Howe, here to begin with some remarks. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate this turnout. Over the last several weeks, we've been working very hard on our agenda, our caucus priorities of jobs and education and government reform and public safety. We've also been working very closely with Governor McDonald and his staff, and we thank them for their help and their hard work in working together to get these issues delivered. We look forward to continuing our work with the administration in the final weeks of the session, including crafting the biennial budget. As Republicans, we believe in efficiency and accountability and innovation, and these are the key principles that guide our legislative outlook. We've had tremendous success in passing that legislation that applies to these ideals that concern everyday Virginians, legislation that's consistent with Republican priorities. Of the 603 bills that passed the House of Delegates, 42% of those bills dealt with jobs, education, government reform, and public safety. If you'll take a look at that pie chart, I may have to ask some of my colleagues to move a bit. You can see very clearly that almost half of the bills that have passed deal with these four core responsibilities that we're so interested in: education, government reform, jobs, and public safety. And contrary to the narrative from our friends across the aisle, what they would have you to believe, contrary to that, less than 2.5% of the bills that passed the House dealt with socially conservative issues. So with that, let's get into some detail about the real work that our caucus has been doing so far this session. And we'd be happy to take any questions that you might have afterwards. Chris?
Next, we invite our caucus chairman, Tim Hugo, and our majority whip, Jackson Miller, to discuss some job proposals.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Jackson Miller. I represent Manassas and Prince William County in the 50th House District of the House of Delegates. And I'm here to reinforce the point the Speaker just made, that we are working very hard to keep Virginia the #1 state to do business in. As politicians on both sides of the aisle, we love to brag about that when we go back home to our districts. It's one thing to brag about it. It's another thing to actually go out and make sure that we maintain that #1 position as a state to do business in. That's not an easy accomplishment, and we have to do it by focusing on core issues like businesses and job growth. And we've done a great job with the majority of our legislation doing that. A couple of those bills to mention are House Bill 33 by Barbara Comstock. This is a bill that will protect non-unionized labor jobs. Terry Kilgore's House Bill 714 is a major job business facility tax credit. These are just some of the many measures that we've promoted this year to help maintain our status as the #1 place to do business in. We are working hard to foster a positive business environment because it is not easy to stay on top. Unlike the other side of the aisle, on the Democratic side, we see bills that would hurt that status and hurt it dramatically. Another one of our charts over here between the gentleman from the Valley are several of the bills that would impose major impositions and taxations on Virginia businesses. This would damage our ability to remain the #1 state to do business in. This has been an outstanding year for the House of Delegates in making sure that what we send over to the Senate and then what we send up to the governor are bills that will maintain our ability to be the #1 state to do business in. We do believe in lower taxes and that the private sector and their innovation, along with strategic government investments, will be what helps us stay a pro-business economy.
Hey, good morning. I'm Tim Hugo. I'm the caucus chairman, but also I have the opportunity to be the vice chairman of finance. And I think if you look at the finance committee this year, nothing draws a clearer contrast between our Democratic colleagues and our Republican colleagues. We've got the chart up here that we looked at, and we had them draw up last night. We pulled 11 of the Democratic bills that failed this year in House Finance. 11 bills were tax increases worth $2.2 billion. Everything from plastic bags to corporations. They wanted 52,000 corporations to have a new alternative minimum tax. They wanted to reinstate the death tax, the estate tax, sales tax, gas tax. Pick a tax that it died this year in House Finance, $2.2 billion, because Republicans said we are making sure, as Jackson indicated, we are making sure we want to have the families of Virginia, we're not going to rob their pocket. The businesses of Virginia that are struggling, we're not going to rob their business lines, bottom lines. And I think that is the clear contrast that you see. It's up there. If you did not have Republicans in control, you would have $2.2 billion worth of tax increases that would have come through this year. So I think when you talk about what have we done this year, the bills that we've talked about that are proactive, I think Jackson and many are going to talk about that, that's very important. But also talk about what would happen if Republicans weren't in control and what differences you would have seen this year. So with that, I appreciate Delegate Peace putting this together. And do that. Appreciate it.
Next, we have Delegates Dickey Bell and Jimmy Massey, who have been champions in the area of education reform.
Go ahead. Thank you, Chris. President John Adams once said, facts are stubborn things. You've heard facts this morning. You're going to hear some more. And one of the facts is that education is changing in this country. It's changing in Virginia. It's going to change whether we want it to or not. The important thing is that we embrace some of that change and that we don't get run over by it. One of the changes that we tried to make this year was with the teacher contract. We honestly believe, and I believe with all my heart, being a former teacher, that the way to raise that profession to its proper standing is to make professionals out of our teachers. This bill does that. If we can get this bill through the Senate, you're going to see one of those changes take place in education. And it's going to be a good change. And the good teachers are going to be rewarded for it. The bad teachers may find out that the teaching profession is not for them. The change is important. It's important to our students. We ask more of our students. We demand stronger rigor for our students. We should demand the same thing from our teachers and from our principals. Thank you.
Thank you, Dickey. I'm Delegate Jimmy Massey. I represent the 72nd District, which is West and Henrico. I mean, this is a little bit of a Whitney Houston week, and Whitney said the children are our future. It's a wonderful song. If we are not taking care of the children and preparing for them for the future, we're not doing very much up down here. And so I think that's why we're extremely focused on education. Affordable access to good education is what we're about. I have House Bill 321, which is my Education Improvement Scholarships bill. We have wonderful public schools in the state of Virginia. We're the 4th best state in which to raise a child. But there are 1 or 2% of children who don't fit in that box. There are 8 other states that have had this program in place for 10 years. It's a program by corporations, and some states allow individuals to donate to scholarship organizations, and those scholarship organizations can award scholarships to kids that just don't fit in the public school box that allows them to go to a non-public school of their parents' choice. 40,000 kids in Florida being helped, 44,000 kids in Pennsylvania being helped, and there's 6 other states. It is absolutely the right thing to do, and there again, we're just providing parents with choices. Second thing I've been working on this year, and I want to thank Delegate Cox for his help on this, is House Bill 325, which is dedicated towards our autistic children. I have an autistic nephew, and our autistic children go to school every day, and they're some of our least of children, least of them children. We owe the commitment to them to make sure that they get absolutely the finest education possible. We've had a little bit of a problem in the state over the years where the paraprofessional aides that they interact with have not had the training, the vast majority of them, that they need to have in order to help these kids. And again, with Delegate Cox's help this year, we got a bill through the House Bill 325, that will require those paraprofessional aides to demonstrate competence to have some training. So those are the 2 things I've been working on, and thank you very much. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Next, we have budget leaders, Delegate Steve Landis and Delegate Chris Jones. They're both conferees. I believe Delegate Jones will be speaking to the VRS reforms and how we're making that program more sustainable into the future. Delegate Landis, Delegate Jones.
Well, first of all, as Republicans, we believe that government reform is important, not only in the budget, but through legislation. And our caucus really has worked hard this year to bring about a more small, efficient, and cost-effective government. Government reform measures that we've put forward will reduce waste, improve efficiency, and create innovative solutions to address Virginia's problems. This year, our number one priority, and Chris is going to talk about, is the Virginia retirement system. And also want to thank the Speaker for his leadership working with Delegate Jones on this, because with this reform, we're going to make real significant change.
Thanks, Steve. You heard the Speaker, he's behind me all the way. Good morning. Of course, Steve and myself and Kirk serve as conferees, one of 6 in the House, and we take our job very seriously, and we realize that a lot of decisions that have to be made aren't easy, and that you must address the tough decisions straight on. This will be the 3rd year that we've had VRS reform in the House. 1189 back in 2010. Last year we had the Chairman's Bill 1024, and this year we have the Speaker's 2 bills, 1129 and 1130. JLARC released a report back in December, and this is a topic that has been first and foremost in our minds, as looking at reform, how we can better leave for the future retirees a system that is fully funded and is delivering to them the benefits that it was designed to deliver. Of course, this year we're looking at taking the recommendations of JLARC, dealing with final annual compensation, COLA reform, etc. And we have spent a lot of time on the 9th floor looking at this issue, and the bills passed out yesterday in the House and will be part of our deliberations going forward. And also, our Chair of General Laws, as most of you know, we had Delegate Gilbert's bill 1291 that dealt with reorganization, government reorganization, and also we had Kathy Byron's bill 1295 dealing with relaxation of local mandates. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next is Delegate Rob Bell, who's the chairman of the Virginia Crime Commission and chairs the Criminal Subcommittee on the Courts of Justice, to talk about public safety issues. Delegate Bell.
We are delighted to report that we've had a successful half session on public safety issues, and the goal, as always, is to keep Virginians safe in their homes, safe on their neighborhoods, safe on their roads. The first, I'll run through 5 or 6 bills and be open for questions after. The first would be the Castle Doctrine is passed again. This would make sure that a person who is in his or her home who has someone come into the house and threaten them with bodily injury can defend themselves without fear of prosecution or being sued. We have 2 DUI bills that we're very proud of. The ignition interlock bill would require that any drunk driver who wants a restricted license will have to get an ignition interlock device that's not currently required. And then Delegate Albo would have mandatory minimum sentences for drunk drivers who kill someone. That would be a substantial increase over the current penalties. Delegate Gilbert has passed again through the House the triggerman rule reform. This would expand the ability to get the death penalty for accomplices to murder, people that are just as guilty as the person that actually pulls the trigger but are not the person who does it. We'd like to make that reform. And lastly, we have several bills that I've written to address child sex offenses. The first would be to address the child pornography rings, where they make you bring new pornography in to become a member of the ring. The second are grooming videos. These are the videos shown to young children to make them or encourage them to have sex with an adult. And the third would be life sentences, and this is the biggest by far. The life sentences for anyone who rapes a child. And that's shocking that that's not already the law, but that would be one of the reforms we have this year. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from our fearless leader, Majority Leader Kirk Cox.
Never knew I was fierce, but I'm supposed to talk on the budget, of course, which is a big secret since it doesn't come out till Sunday. But let me say a few things. What a difference 2 years make. Let me remind you, the last governor embedded one of the largest tax increases, Tim Kaine, in the budget. And that's what we had to deal with. And if you recall, that was defeated on the floor by a unanimous vote. Didn't see that with Governor McDonnell. We're very supportive of his core budget, a structurally sound, balanced budget without a tax increase. There's several quick items worth noting in his budget that we certainly support. The accelerated sales tax, getting that down to where only those that have annual sales over $26 million will be included. That's $50 million of very good funding. We fully fund the rainy day fund. You know, this is one of those things that gets forgotten, but good budgeting. If you remember back in the last budget, we actually had a reserve fund where we put $114 million aside, knowing there was going to be a rainy day payment. That's going to fund most of the 2014 payment. You get very little credit for that type of thing, but that's good sound budgeting that we did. And obviously, Delegate Jones and Landis and the Speaker have talked about this, but our commitment to fund our obligations to VRS in the budget. Let me give you a little preview of what we're looking at. One of the things we've done is we had every single Republican and Democrat come up to appropriations that wanted to and could give us their input on the budget. When I got here, there were like 4 Republicans on appropriations. I guarantee you that didn't happen. As a matter of fact, we spent over 4 hours with the Democrats listening to their ideas on the budget. So we've really tried to open this process up, I think, more than any other group ever has. But let me tell you some of the input. Great budget, we'd like to make it better. Fees. There's some small fees in the budget. The governor has reasons for those, that they have a direct nexus, that obviously the fee hasn't been raised in a long time, but we're really going to try to achieve where they come out of the budget. We feel pretty strongly that no taxes and no fees should be in the House budget. We've examined every program, whether it's the governor's program or other programs, and we're capturing some savings for those programs to put in some key things, like third grade reading, one of the most fundamental things you can have in K-12. We only currently fund about 25% participation in third grade reading. We want to get that to 100%. And other things like one of our goals, reduce as much debt as we can in the budget. We take debt very seriously, and we've gone to the bond rating agencies up in New York. They've said debt's got to be low. So those are some of the goals in the budget. You'll see the real thing when it comes out on Sunday, but we hope to achieve most of those goals.
We'll have some closing remarks from our caucus chairman, Mr. Hugo.
I think you heard Kirk talk about the strategic investments, the government strategic investments that the Appropriation Committee and this caucus is going to make. And that's what we're going to do this year. And then because Republicans believe in strategic government investment, lower taxes, and lower regulations. Our colleagues on the other side, I do believe the contrast is sharp. It's higher taxes and more regulation. I think sometimes you're lucky in politics. This week, the president came out with a $1.4 trillion tax increase proposal. That's a common thread that runs through the Democratic proposals. I talked about the $2.2 billion increases that died in House Finance this year, proposed by 11 Democratic bills. That is the difference. But the reason Virginia continues to be the best governed state in the nation, all these magazines say it, is because I think the Republican control talks about lower taxes, government investment, and low regulation. We will continue with that thread. We will continue that, and we will continue to draw the contrast. And with that, I would say we have a good day. We've had a good month in the House of Delegates. I think we're going to have another good month. I would ask you to look, our investments right there, our priorities there are the 42% of our bills are the House priorities: education, transportation, government investment, and public safety. So with that, I think we'll turn it over to Chris Peace to wrap up, and thank you for all you've done.
Yeah, thank you. Want to also recognize the Deputy Majority Leader Todd Gilbert and our Deputy Majority Whip Kathy Byron, who are here with us today, who have provided amazing leadership this first half of the House session. At this point, for members of the press, we'll take some questions. If you would identify yourself and also direct your question to a particular member by name so we can have that person come to the lectern.
Crime and tax reform and jobs, that sort of thing. So you say you want to focus on that, but obviously you have a rally focusing not on jobs but on social issues this morning. Anyone want to comment on that or how that jives with that issue?
This is our rally.
Yeah, I was not aware of any rally. I was not invited. I think the proof in the pudding is this graph over here, this pie chart that shows less than 2.5% of the bills that passed the House dealt with social issues. Almost 50% of the bills that passed dealt with our core responsibilities. I think that answers the question.
Sir.
I guess I'm ready to read with the views in advance of this is probably for Speaker Hill. 2.5% of the bills were social issues. Would you itemize what you consider to be social issues, just by topic?
I think bills dealing with guns, gun rights, Second Amendment rights, bills dealing with abortion rights, and pretty much those issues.
Yes.
I'm also not sure.
Can you identify yourself? And
sorry,
yeah.
my name is Hannah Hess, and I work for the Virginia State House News. And when the Conservative Caucus and the Progressive Caucus laid out their legislative agenda at the beginning of the year, both mentioned transparency in the awarding of tax credits. Is that something that we're going to see move through? Do you expect that bill to pass, and do you expect Governor Bell to sign it?
We passed a bill to set up a process to have a joint subcommittee, standing joint subcommittee for actually the Senate Finance and House Finance and a couple members of House Appropriations to look at the preferences and what we're doing with tax preferences and credits and the like. That's going to be ongoing. Delegate Ben Klein had legislation actually institute, if you will, the sunset process, and House Finance worked on that under the leadership of Chairman Perkey and Delegate Hugo. So that's in place as well. So we have addressed that and are moving forward. We hope our Senate colleagues will agree to both those measures.
Do you expect Governor McDonald to sign that measure?
If it gets out of the Senate, I expect he would be supportive of both those.
Are there further questions?
Larry O'Dell, Associated Press. I think it's for Delegate Hugo. You mentioned $2.2 billion in tax increases. My math isn't very good, but I don't think that adds up to that. Is that an annual figure there you're talking about?
We can give you those numbers. Yeah, it's 2.2. If you look at what they've done, these are some highlights with respect to this. But you had sales tax, you had the reinstitution of the death tax, and actually that would be even worse because at the end of this year, it's pegged to the federal estate death tax. When that goes up, ours would go up too if their bill was implemented. Gas taxes, the AMT for. And the Delegate England said it, it would impact 52,000 Virginia companies, his minimum AMT for all the companies in Virginia. So we looked at these, and you look at these numbers, and we think it would have had a tremendous impact on Virginia's rating as the best managed state in the country and the best place to do business.
Anyone else have first question?
Yes. I guess we're allowed to talk about the Senate here.
Jefferson's rule.
Yeah, we're not supposed to talk about what they do on the House floor. No, we're actually optimistic. The changes in the Senate this year, it appears that they've passed out a version. We'll have to reconcile somehow and make sure that we can get something both sides can agree to. But looks much more promising than the past. In the past, we have passed out versions out of the House, but have never had success in the Senate, and that's where the stumbling block has been. But we'll see if this is a different Senate this time. So we always say we're guardedly optimistic. Just to be clear, while Bell's name is on it, this is a common confusion. It's actually other Bell's Bill. Yeah.
First question. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be optimistic because I'm always optimistic. And obviously we've got a little work to do between now and the time they consider that. But and we're doing some work on it. But I feel good about it. I still think it's good legislation. And we'll present it in a positive way. And I'm going to remain optimistic.
Just a couple more minutes. Last question for you. Or the next question.
You've asked about the opinion of the Republican Caucus. Yeah, there have been a few individual members, but if you look, right, they were dealt with the same way. Those taxes did not go forward. But if you look at what's really happened, the volume of bills, tax increase bills, have been from my Democratic colleagues. Look, I just think it's a common thread, whether you're in Washington or Richmond, if you're a Democrat, they have said point blank, we want to raise taxes. So you saw it this week with the president. You've seen it the last month with my Democratic colleagues.
Members will be available after we close today. We thank you for coming to this press avail. We will continue next Monday at 11 o'clock here in the House briefing room on our next subject.